welcome to my story. I'm so thankful that all of y'all are watching this. I just want to say a disclaimer here at the beginning that this story is not a factual story because it is a story based off my memories. So, who do I think I am? Well, let's see.
Okay, so I'm feeling called at this part of my story to give an overview and an update and to just kind of fill in little details that were there, but whenever you're telling the story, they just get overlooked, you know? So I just want to do an overview. Basically, I think that our life is divided into 7 years. Every 7 years, and I know for me, I can think back every 7 years I've had a breakthrough. For me, it's always a breakthrough. That's what I do. I break down and then I break through. So the first 7 years of my life, I feel, was very chaotic. I broke my neck. I got separated from my mother. I was put in situations that I didn't understand. I was going here, there, and everywhere, and I never knew where I was going. I didn't know who my mom was. I didn't know who my dad was. I didn't understand. Well, I always had to go here, there, and everywhere. I felt hated. I didn't feel loved. Or the one place that I felt loved, I felt like I wasn't allowed to stay. I had to go with all these people that don't like me. It was very chaotic. And yeah, so the first couple years are very chaotic and upsetting, and it is what it is. I talked about in my infancy story about my neck being broken, and I wasn't aware of that. I just always felt choked, and it was always hard for me to deal with stuff. I really wasn't aware of that. Then my grandpa died, and he hung himself, and I felt responsible for that. So I've always felt like I was being choked my whole life until recently, just a couple years ago, whenever I got into my healing. And I'll get into that once we get there. But honestly, for the longest, I always felt choked. And I would wear if I wore baggy stuff, it had to be baggy around my neck. And if not, then I couldn't have stuff around my neck. I always felt choked. I do remember that at my mom's house, I was always playing. I was always trying to learn, it seemed. I was always reading or, seeking my curiosity, going outside and seeing how things are doing, like following the ants. Like I would do stuff like that, follow the ants and watch them and watch what they do and just observe the ants. I was very much like that as a little kid. And at my grandma's, I remember I just loved their big backyard. They had a garden back there, and I felt like I could feel the earth flying through space. And so I would just lay down on the grass and watch the sky and just feel like I'm flying through space on earth. And it was a wonderful feeling. I did that often as a little girl. Another thing is, one of my favorite things to do was play video games and listen to my cassette tapes. And my first cassette tapes that I ever got was Paula Abdul and Janet Jackson. So I do want to say that those were my first cassette tapes, and I would listen to as I got older, I got into Mariah Carey and TLC a whole lot. And I would listen to my cassette tapes and play my video games often. Okay, so another thing is my uncle, who was older than me. I always wanted to be in his room and mess with his things, always, and it drove him crazy. I was like a little sister to him, and he was like a big brother to me. And he never did allow me to be in his room. He was always playing video games. I love to watch him play video games, and I love to play video games myself. And whenever he was there, I would sit right outside his door because he wouldn't allow me in. And so I would sit right outside his door. And so I was probably very annoying to him. I would play with my bouncy balls a whole lot. I had a lot of competitions with bouncy balls. Like, how many times can you bounce it off the wall? How many times can you clap and bounce it? All kinds of different things with my bouncy balls. I had tons of bouncy balls. And I also, at my grandmother's house, I would always be reading my Bible, and I would go to my great grandmother's house, who lived right behind us. She was always there every morning to say hello, but I would always go to her house, and I would ask her about her life, and I would ask her to tell me about her life. And I loved her stories. She would tell me how lucky I am that I get to continue my education, and she did make me feel lucky that I was able to learn, that I was able to relax and learn. Hearing about her childhood, it made me feel lucky. And another thing that happened a lot with my great grandmother, her friend would come pick her up and they would go antiquing. And my great grandmother would let me go with her. And we would go antiquing, and I would always get a beanie baby, a different beanie baby, usually a cat. If I could find a cat beanie baby, that's the one that I would get. So I've always loved cats. I've always been drawn to cats. In Utah, in third grade, I had a neighbor just down the hall, and I would go over to their house and we would play Super Mario 2, and they had the baby alive. Yeah, they had the baby alive. So it was so awesome. I was always like, well, she's my baby today. The little girl that had her didn't care nothing about her, and yeah, she didn't care. She was just like, I'm so happy that you're here to play with me. Oh, it's your baby. I'll be auntie. So if she cared, I probably would have fought. Honestly. Interesting. I am so grateful for my life. I'm grateful for the chaos that I began in, because I feel like it gives me a different perspective. And that's why I want to let people know about my story, because I think not all stories are like my stories. I think that there's some out there that are very similar. They're my soul family and I love them so much, but my story has started off in chaos, and I want y'all to see it gives me another perspective. It gives me a deeper perspective of the world in general, because being able to go, antiquing with your grandma, and then being able to walk down a dark alley and, all by yourself at the same time, you're the same person. Your grandma's super loving and protective of you, but over here you're all on your own, and it shows you a whole different side of life. And then you go to your dad's and it's like hillbilly hoedown. I just wanted to say that, with my overview. And yeah, I really did. I was dedicated to God and Jesus. I really was dedicated to them to the best that I could be. I was dedicated to reading my Bible, and I just loved it. It was full of wisdom for me. I love Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes, I think, is one of my favorite books of the Bible, or it was. I didn't really relate to the prophets until I got older. But as a child, the prophets were kind of boring, and why are they doing that? And, confusing. So I would just kind of skim through the prophets, and I would get to what I felt was, the wisdom of it. And I loved that. And I was usually preaching to my little brother. If I wasn't preaching to my little brother, I was preaching to my cousins. Because, the church, it tells you, get more converts, even in your own land, because, I don't know, you kind of have this feeling of, everybody's a convert here, church. What more do you want? But they're like, no, get more converts. You need more here and everywhere. I do remember one time I asked my aunts about, when is Jesus gonna come back? Is he gonna come back or what? Because my mom, she would be like, oh yeah, they've been saying that he's gonna come back forever. Get over that. But, my aunt's like, he'll come back whenever, it's the right time. And, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, I get more and more into my Bible, especially once I'm able to move out of my mom's, and I was living with my grandparents, and I was now in the teen department and doing Wednesday night church along with Sunday church. And, I was also participating in the teen department, usually doing things on Friday night with the church. I went to my first concert, which was a Christian concert, and I loved it. Of course I loved it. I love the spirit of music and concerts for the most part. Nowadays there's some that I'm like, but I love concerts. I love the atmosphere. It's intense. You can only get it at a concert, there's something about people gathering. Once I got to be with my grandparents, I really was dedicated to being the best Christian that I could possibly be. And then I get baptized, and it seems like everything goes downhill. Everything. And it's crazy because me and my cousin Lindsay, we seem to get into trouble all the time. But from my point of view, we were having fun. It was just fun, like, I don't know. I would rationalize some things in my mind. And, my grandpa, he taught me. I asked my grandpa, how do you know the difference between good and evil? Whether you're doing good or doing evil. And he told me, baby girl, if you have to rationalize it to do it, you're probably doing evil. So I did have to rationalize a lot of things that I did, and that wasn't good. But it's like it happens like that, like you don't even realize that you're doing it. Like, oh, you know that it's not good. Oh, well, it'll be fun. Let's do it, Okay, let's do it, It's the kind of vibe that I got. It was fun. And it wasn't, I didn't ever feel like, I didn't feel like I was hurting anyone. If I felt like I was hurting anyone, I probably wouldn't. But then again, if it was my brother, I probably would at that time in my life. But once I got baptized, I want to say that I got better, but it seems like I used to think that I was really good until I was 14. But I think once I got baptized, I really began to get tested. I really, really began to get tested. Because I do remember one time that we went to the mall and we stole like all kinds of stuff, all kinds of little stuff, nothing big, but I stole like all these keychains because I wanted all the keychains. For some reason, I wanted all the keychains and I stole them. And I had like all these knickknacks and stolen stuff. And I took them back to my grandparents, and I was embarrassed and I regretted it. And so I took all the stuff that I stole and put it in a bag and went and buried it in my grandparents' backyard as if, okay, done and done. That's not how it's done, but it's what I did. And, yeah, so I do wonder sometimes if if all these keychains and knickknacks and stuff are still buried back there, or if my grandparents saw me burying stuff and were like, what is she doing, and got into it. More than likely they saw it because my grandma is nosy Rosie because it's out of love. It's out of love. If she loves you, she's going to be nosy about your life. And I was like that for a while too. I was a lot like my grandma. I love my grandma. Yeah, so I've wondered if they're still there. I'm not brave enough to ask about it at all. I guess I should. I probably should ask, and finally air it out, let it out, because it's the releasing of these things that helps heal us. So maybe I should talk to my grandma and be like, look, whenever I was, in like 6th grade, about 12, 13, I stole a bunch of stuff and I felt really guilty and I thought that I could just bury it in the backyard. Of course I did say prayers, forgive me, I'm not going to do it again, I promise. Like for me, I always felt like, don't ask God for forgiveness if you know you're going to do it tomorrow. Don't do that. Don't even ask God for forgiveness if you know you're going to do it tomorrow. So I was like, please forgive me, dear Lord. I promise I won't steal anymore. And I really meant it in my heart. I lied, but I really meant it in my heart at the time. I think God knows your heart, and that's how God decides, So I think God did forgive me, but at the same time, in doing penance or stuff like that, the most highly spiritual way is to make it right in the physical. I should have taken it back to the stores, apologize. I probably wouldn't have taken it back, but I would have to insist that they take it back or whatever. And if they wanted to press charges or whatever they wanted to do with me, I needed to take that punishment. That's the right way to handle things spiritually. And then ask God for forgiveness and say, I won't do it again. And you're more likely to not do it again because you took your punishment and you ate your crow, So sometimes you got to eat crow and you got to take your punishment in order to get there. Yeah. Oh, goodness. So, yeah, I just wanted to do a quick wrap up and throw in a couple little details, little sprinkles on top of my story. So all the sprinkles that get left out, I just wanted to put them in because everybody loves sprinkles, right? Right? I don't know. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Please be blessed. Thank you.